Welcome back to Mastery Kit. In this deep dive, we're going to be talking about making small changes
Okay.
that can create massive shifts in your life.
Yeah.
And we are going to be dissecting some of the key ideas from a book I read recently called Iconic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, awesome.
Have you ever?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's a good one.
I've got to say, this book is just packed with actionable insights.
It really is. And what's so fascinating about it is that he doesn't give you some magical secret or quick fix.
Right.
He really breaks down the science of habit formation and provides a framework that anyone can use to get remarkable results.
Yeah, one of the things that really struck me was how Clear emphasizes the power of tiny improvements.
Right.
These like 1% changes that compound over time.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the story of British cycling.
Okay.
Did you heard of this?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so they were struggling for years until their coach, Dave Brailsford, introduced this concept of marginal gains.
Yes.
It's like instead of focusing on making these big drastic changes, he just had the team focus on improving every tiny aspect of their training and performance by just 1%. So we're talking things like optimizing their bike seats.
Wow.
Testing different fabrics for their racing suits.
Interesting.
Even like teaching the riders the most effective way to wash their hands to prevent infections.
Wow, that's crazy.
It sounds a little obsessive, right?
Yeah.
But the results were incredible.
Yeah.
British cycling went from being mediocre to like dominating the sport, racking up Olympic gold medals and Tour de France victories.
It's amazing.
Like they completely transformed their performance by sweating the small stuff.
It's a powerful example of how these insignificant improvements, when you apply them consistently, lead to extraordinary results.
Totally.
And it's the heart of atomic habits, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to make massive, overwhelming changes to see real progress.
So how do we apply this concept of marginal gains to our own lives?
Yeah, that's the question.
Well, Clear outlines a framework for habit change based on 4 laws.
Okay.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Love it.
So let's dive into these laws and see how we can use them to upgrade our habits.
Yes.
And make those 1% shifts that end up to big change.
Yeah, let's start with make it obvious.
Okay.
So Clear argues that many of our habits are so ingrained that we perform them unconsciously, almost like on autopilot.
Right.
So the first step is to bring those habits into our conscious awareness.
He mentions this interesting technique that's used by Japanese railway workers
Okay.
called pointing and calling.
Interesting.
They literally point at a switch and say out loud what they're about to do.
Oh, wow.
Even for like simple tasks.
Yeah.
It sounds a little strange.
It does.
But it forces them to be present, and it reduces errors.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's about breaking that cycle of automatic behavior
Right.
and bringing those actions into the realm of conscious choice.
Yes.
We can apply this to our own lives by just pausing before we engage in a habit. For instance, before you reach for your phone to scroll through social media, just stop and ask yourself, is this what I really want to be doing right now?
That moment of awareness can be incredibly powerful.
It is.
It creates a space where we can choose differently, aligning our actions with our goals.
Yes.
Instead of just mindlessly following these old patterns.
Exactly. And Claire also suggests that we design our environment to make our desired habits more obvious and our undesirable ones less. So
give me an example.
Like if you're trying to eat healthier, place a bowl of fruit on the counter where you can see it and tuck those tempting snacks away in a hard-to-reach cabinet.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like you're setting yourself up for success.
Exactly.
By making the cues for good habits more prominent.
Yes.
And the names for bad habits less invisible.
It's not about relying on willpower alone.
Right.
It's about creating an environment that supports the choices you want to make.
Totally. And he also talks about this idea of habit stacking.
Oh, yeah.
Which is essentially linking a new habit to an existing one. So you might say, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes.
I love that.
Yeah, you're leveraging the momentum of an existing routine to trigger a new positive behavior.
That's brilliant.
It takes the pressure off having to create an entirely new routine.
Right.
And it makes it easier to integrate those small changes into our daily lives.
It does.
Speaking of making things easier,
yes,
that brings us to the second law, make it attractive.
Okay.
Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Right.
So if we want to build a habit, we need to make it appealing in some way.
Okay.
Clear suggests tapping into our natural inclination to imitate others. We're more likely to adopt habits that we see people we admire, or those in our social circles doing.
Interesting.
He mentions the story of the Polgar sisters.
Okay.
These 3 chess prodigies that were raised by their father to be world-class players.
Wow.
Their environment was entirely centered around chess, and their success was celebrated.
That's cool.
By their family and the chess community.
Yeah.
So that consistent reinforcement made practicing chess more attractive and rewarding.
It's a powerful example of how our social context can shape our habits.
Think about the people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Do their habits support your goals or hinder them? Surrounding ourselves with people who embody the qualities we want to cultivate can have a significant impact on our own behavior.
I agree.
So like finding a supportive community.
Yes.
Whether it's a running club, a book club, even just a group of friends who share similar goals can be a really powerful way to make those positive habits more appealing.
It's about creating an environment where those habits are not only encouraged but celebrated.
I like that.
Yeah.
And Claire also mentions the importance of reframing our mindset around those habits that we might initially view as unpleasant. So instead of thinking of exercise as a chore, we can reframe it as a way to relieve stress, boost our energy levels,
I see.
or improve our mood.
It's about finding ways to highlight the positive aspects of the habit.
Exactly.
And connecting it to something we genuinely value and enjoy.
So we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive.
Okay.
Now, how do we make it easy? Because even when we're motivated, sometimes those initial steps can feel so daunting.
Right.
This is where Claire's third law comes in, make it easy.
Okay.
He introduces the 2-minute rule.
I like this one.
Which states that when you're starting a new habit, it should take no more than 2 minutes to...
I do.
So, for example, if you want to start a writing habit, don't aim to write a whole chapter every day.
Right.
Just commit to sitting down and writing for 2 minutes.
That seems almost too simple.
I know, right?
How can 2 minutes make a difference?
I know, right? Well, it's about overcoming that initial inertia, that resistance to starting.
Okay.
Often, once we take that first step, we find ourselves continuing for longer than we initially planned.
That's true.
By making the starting point as frictionless as possible, we increase the likelihood of actually following through.
It makes sense.
Like the trick I use to get my work to the gym.
Okay, what's that?
I tell myself, I'll just put on my workout clothes. Once I've done that, I'm much more likely to actually go for a workout.
Yeah.
It's a small action, but it sets the whole evening in motion.
Exactly. And Clear also emphasizes the importance of designing our environment to make those good habits easier to perform.
So give me some examples.
Like laying out your workout clothes the night before.
Okay.
Preparing healthy snacks ahead of time. Or keeping a book on your bedside table so it's readily available when you want to read.
Right.
It's about removing obstacles and making those desired actions the path of least resistance.
It's about setting ourselves up for success by creating an environment that supports our goals.
Totally.
Okay, we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive, we've made it easy.
Yeah, what about satisfying?
What about the final law, make it satisfying?
Yes.
This one's crucial because our brains are wired to prioritize immediate gratification over delayed rewards.
Yeah, if a habit doesn't feel good or rewarding in some way, we're less likely to repeat it.
So we need to find ways to make our good habits enjoyable.
Yeah.
Even if the bigger payoffs come later down the line, how do we do that?
So Clear suggests using rewards positive reinforcement.
Okay.
Or even just a sense of accomplishment to make the habit feel satisfying.
So like, give me an example.
You might track your progress in a habit tracker. Celebrate milestones.
Okay.
Or give yourself a small reward when you successfully complete a certain number of repetitions.
Oh, I love using habit trackers.
They're great.
It's so satisfying to visually see that streak building up.
It's a great way to tap into our brain's reward system and make those small wins feel more tangible.
Yes, and when we see those check marks or those filled-in squares, it reinforces our sense of identity as someone who embodies that habit.
Exactly.
And this reminds me of something else Clear talks about.
Okay.
The importance of identity in shaping our habits. He argues that true behavior change starts with an identity shift.
That is a key insight.
Instead of focusing on specific outcomes,
Yeah.
we should focus on becoming the type of person who embodies those outcomes.
Right.
So if you want to build a habit of exercising regularly, start seeing yourself as an athlete.
Okay.
Or someone who values fitness.
It's like shifting your self-image from someone who has to exercise to someone who chooses to exercise.
And as we act in accordance with our desired identity, we reinforce that identity and make it more likely that we'll continue those actions in the future.
It's a powerful concept.
So it's not about waiting for some magical transformation to occur.
Right.
It's about taking action and letting our actions shape our beliefs about ourselves.
Exactly. And remember those small 1% changes we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Each time we act in alignment with our desired identity, we're casting a vote for the person we want to become.
It's almost like we're building a new self, one small habit at a time.
I love that.
But what about those bad habits that seem impossible to break?
Yeah.
We've talked about how to build good habits. But how do we apply these principles in reverse to get rid of those unwanted behaviors?
So that's where the 4 laws of behavior change come in.
Okay.
They're essentially the inverse of the 4 laws we've been discussing.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So instead of make it obvious, we have make it invisible.
Okay.
Instead of make it attractive, we have make it unattractive.
Got it.
And so on.
Okay, let's break these down. How do we make a bad habit invisible?
It's about reducing our exposure to the cues that trigger those unwanted behaviors.
Okay.
So if you're trying to cut back on social media, delete the apps from your phone or log out of your account.
Okay.
If you're trying to resist those tempting snacks in your pantry,
Yeah.
rearrange your shelves so the healthy options are front and center.
It's like removing the temptation by making those cues less visible and less accessible.
Exactly.
And to make a bad habit unattractive, we can reframe our mindset and highlight the negative consequences of that behavior.
Yeah, so for example, if you're trying to quit smoking, remind yourself of the health risks, the financial costs, and the impact it has on your loved ones.
It's about shifting our perspective from that immediate gratification to the long-term consequences.
Exactly.
And then there's make it difficult.
Yes.
So instead of making the bad habit easy, we want to increase the friction associated with it. For example, if you're trying to watch less TV, unplug it after each use, or put the remote in a drawer.
Okay.
If you want to curb your online shopping, remove your saved credit card information from websites.
Interesting.
Or unsubscribe from those tempting email lists.
Yeah.
It's like putting obstacles in the path of those unwanted behaviors makes them less convenient and more effortful.
Exactly.
And finally, to make a bad habit unsatisfying, we can focus on the immediate negative consequences.
Right.
This might involve setting up a system of accountability.
Yes.
Or consequences. Like Brian Harris's habit contract with his wife and personal trainer.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
He had specific penalties in place if he didn't follow through on his healthy eating and exercise habits.
Wow.
It sounds a bit extreme.
It does.
But it clearly worked for him.
Yeah, it's about making the costs of inaction greater than the costs of action.
All of this really highlights how much control we have over our environment and our choices.
It is empowering.
It's empowering to realize that we can design our lives in a way that supports the person we want to become.
Absolutely. So we were talking about how to design our lives to support who we want to be.
Right. And it can be tough sometimes when you slip up.
Oh, totally.
You know, it's so easy to get discouraged when we miss a day at the gym or indulge that extra slice of cake.
Yeah.
I know a lot of us, myself included, we tend to just throw in the towel and say, well, you know, I blew it. Might as well just give up.
It's a really common reaction, but Clear argues that it's actually the most damaging thing you can do.
Okay.
He calls this the never miss twice rule.
Okay.
So if you slip up, don't beat yourself up about it.
Right.
Just make sure you get back on track as quickly as possible.
So it's not about striving for perfection.
Yeah.
But rather just about minimizing the damage when we make a mistake.
Exactly. A single missed occasion is just a blip.
Right.
But a string of missed occasions can quickly turn into a lost habit.
Oh, okay.
Think about it like this.
Okay.
If you miss your workout one morning, it's not a big deal.
Right.
But if you miss 2 mornings in a row,
you're
starting to establish a pattern of inaction.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, and speaking of habits,
okay,
one technique Clear recommends for staying on track is habit tracking.
Oh, yeah.
You can use a simple notebooks, an app, or even just a calendar to mark off each day that you successfully perform the habit.
I've found that habit tracking can be incredibly motivating.
Yeah.
It's like giving yourself a visual reminder of your progress.
Exactly.
And that streak you're building.
It's a great way to tap into our brain's reward system and make those small wins feel more tangible.
And when we see those check marks or those filled in squares, it reinforces our sense of identity as someone who embodies that habit.
Exactly.
And this reminds me of something else Clear talks about, the importance of identity in shaping our habits. He argues that true behavior change starts with an identity shift.
That's a key insight.
So instead of focusing on specific outcomes, we should focus on becoming the type of person who embodies those outcomes.
Right.
So if you want to build a habit of exercising regularly, Start seeing yourself as an athlete.
Okay.
Or someone who values fitness.
It's like shifting your self-image from someone who has to exercise to someone who chooses to exercise.
And as we act in accordance with our desired identity, we reinforce that identity and make it more likely that we'll continue those actions in the future.
It's a really powerful concept.
So it's not about waiting for some magical transformation to occur.
Right.
It's about taking action.
Yes.
And letting our actions shape our beliefs about ourselves.
Exactly. And remember those small 1% changes we talked about earlier. Each time we act in alignment with our desired identity, we're casting a vote for the person we want to become.
It's almost like we're building a new self.
Yeah.
One small habit at a time.
I love that analogy.
But what about those bad habits that seem impossible to break?
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about how to build good habits. But how do we apply these principles in reverse to get rid of those unwanted behaviors?
So that's where the 4 laws of behavior change come in.
Okay.
They're essentially the inverse of the 4 laws we've been discussing.
Oh, okay.
So instead of make it obvious, we have make it invisible.
Got it.
Instead of make it attractive, we have make it unattractive.
Okay.
And so on.
Let's break these down.
Okay.
How do we make a bad habit invisible?
It's about reducing our exposure to the cues that trigger those unwanted behaviors. So if you're trying to cut back on social media, delete the apps from your phone or log out of your accounts.
Got it.
If you're trying to resist those tempting snacks in your pantry,
yeah, those are tough.
rearrange your shelves so the healthy options are front and center.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's like removing the temptation by making those cues less visible and less accessible.
Exactly. And to make a bad habit unattractive, we can reframe our mindset and highlight the negative consequences of that behavior.
So give me an example.
If you're trying to quit smoking, remind yourself of the health risks, the financial costs, and the impact it has on your loved ones. Right.
So it's about shifting our perspective from that immediate gratification to those long-term consequences.
Exactly.
And then there's make it difficult.
Yes.
Instead of making the bad habit easy, we want to increase the friction associated with it. So if you're trying to watch less TV, unplug it after each use or put the remote in a drawer.
Okay, interesting.
If you want to curb your online shopping, remove your saved credit card information from websites. Or unsubscribe from those tempting email lists.
Those are good strategies.
Yeah, it's like putting obstacles in the path of those unwanted behaviors, making them less convenient and more effortful.
Yes.
Okay.
And finally, to make a bad habit unsatisfying, we can focus on the immediate negative consequences.
Okay.
This might involve setting up a system of accountability, like we talked about.
Like the habit contract.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Like Brian Harris's habit contract with his wife and personal trainer.
Oh, yeah.
He had specific penalties in place if he didn't follow through on his healthy eating and exercise habits.
Sounds a bit extreme.
It does.
But it clearly works for him.
Yeah, it's about making the costs of inaction greater than the costs of action.
You know, all of this really highlights how much control we have over our environment and our choices.
It is empowering.
It's empowering to realize that we can design our lives in a way that supports the person we want to become.
Absolutely, and that's a really great point to transition into the next section.
So we've been talking about awareness and how it relates to making changes in our lives.
Yeah, it's really the foundation for any kind of meaningful change you want to make.
And it all comes back to habits.
Right, exactly.
Which we've been dissecting from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
It's such a good book.
There's so much good stuff in there.
It's really packed with information.
One of the things that kind of surprised me, actually, was how he talks about happiness and desire.
Oh, yeah.
And how they play into habit formation. It seems a bit counterintuitive.
It does, right? Because don't we need desire to motivate us to change?
That's what we always hear, right?
Yeah, totally. And Clear actually suggests that true happiness often comes from the absence of desire.
Really?
Yeah, when we're content with our current state, we don't feel this need to constantly be chasing external goals or achievements.
So it's not about eliminating desire completely.
No, not at all.
But rather about finding a sense of peace and contentment within ourselves.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
I like that.
And he argues that a lot of our cravings and desires are fleeting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, that new car, that promotion, that perfect relationship, they might bring temporary happiness. But true satisfaction comes from mastering the habit loop itself.
So instead of focusing on the outcome, we should focus on the process of building the habit.
Right.
And the sense of accomplishment that comes with it.
It's about enjoying the journey, not just the destination.
Totally.
And that mastery of the habit loop can then spill over into other areas in our lives, creating this positive ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's like you build momentum. Each small one in each habit we master.
Right.
It gives us the confidence and motivation to tackle bigger challenges.
It reminds me of what we were saying before.
What's that?
About the importance of finding a game where the odds are in your favor.
Yeah.
When we focus on building habits that align with our strengths and our values, we're much more likely to experience that sense of satisfaction and accomplishment.
Absolutely. And Clear also highlights this really fascinating point.
How was that?
Appealing to emotion is often way more powerful than appealing to reason when it comes to changing our behavior.
It makes sense when you think about it. Yeah, our habits are often driven by our emotional responses to cues in our environment.
Exactly.
We reach for that bag of chips because it makes us feel comforted. Or we scroll through social media because it distracts us from boredom or anxiety.
Yeah, those are great examples.
So if we want to build better habits, we need to tap into that emotional side of the equation.
I agree.
We need to find ways to make those good habits feel good. And those bad habits feel bad.
Right. Remember the 4 laws we discussed? Make it attractive and make it satisfying.
It's about working with our natural tendencies, not against them.
Exactly.
We're not trying to suppress our emotions.
Right.
We're just trying to channel them.
Yeah.
In a way that supports our goals.
And this is where self-awareness is so crucial.
Yes, it's so important.
By becoming more aware of our emotional triggers, we can start to interrupt those automatic patterns and make more conscious choices.
So instead of reaching for that bag of chips, decide to go for a walk or connect with a friend instead of scrolling through social media.
That's a great example.
This whole conversation has been really amazing.
Yeah.
And it's really highlighted the power of making small changes. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed when you think about making these big sweeping changes in your life.
I know.
But Clear reminds us that it's those tiny 1% improvements, consistently tied, that ultimately lead to the most significant transformation.
It's about embracing that philosophy of continuous improvement.
I love that.
It's not about reaching some arbitrary finish line.
Right.
It's about committing to that journey of becoming the best version of ourselves.
And that's what Master Shift is all about.
It is.
We're here to support you on that journey, to give you the tools and strategies you need to master your habits, shift your mindset, and unlock your full potential.
Absolutely. And if you're ready to take that next step,
yes,
we encourage you to check out masteryshift.com.
It's a great resource.
There you'll find exclusive PDFs and resources and exercises that will help you put all these principles into action.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at MasterShift for daily inspiration and support.
The great community.
Keep those mastery shifts coming, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.